this at a later date. If, however, you would like to contact me, there is the chat function. So hopefully you should be able to just see I've said hello. You can just type and talk to me all the way through. Not a problem at all. So what we're going to look at today is part of the reading exams where you are expected to understand why somebody has written a text. And we cover this by looking at three main points. The first one being the purpose of the text, the second being the audience, and the third one being the form or the format of the text. Now, don't worry if you're making notes or anything like that. A, this is being recorded. B, anything that I show you today, I will send you by email as well. So if I show you any websites, I will send you out an email that has all of those links so you still have access to everything. So if I start off just by showing you this, I hope you can see my slides, but if you can't, don't worry. Again, I will send you everything. So before we start writing anything, we need to consider those three things: purpose, audience, and form, because they influence how we write something, but also what it looks like. For example, this is a timetable. And we can tell this without even reading any of the words. We can see it's in squares, we have days. If you received a letter in the post and just saw how the information is put on the paper, you could tell it's a letter without reading a single word. And what we're going to look at today is just basically what each of the types of text we are expected to write in the exams, what they should look like. That's it. So the types of text, the most common types of text, if I just find, here we go. The ones you're expected to know at level 1 and at level 2 functional skills: letters, so messages that are sent directly, but they are sent physically. You have a physical piece of paper that is sent to a physical address. We have emails, so very similar to a letter, but obviously sent electronically. We have forum posts. So I don't know if either of you have used message boards or anything like Reddit. They are message boards where people who have a similar interest in a subject will write their opinions. So, for example, for me, my favourite thing in the world is dogs. Sorry. But it means that when I go onto websites like Reddit, I will find specific chats where people talk about, in my case, greyhound dogs. Mine is asleep on the floor next to me as I speak. So we have forum posts, and then the last one is where we have reviews. And these come up fairly often. So it's similar to if we are buying something like off Amazon or any big websites. If we are deciding between two products, we will often read the reviews because they will tell us if something is good and why, or if something is bad and why. So we're expected to write reviews usually of places or things that we've purchased. And these are the most two common that I've seen on the exams. So they all look ever so slightly different. Now, I'm just going to share something with you. My little whiteboard. Oh, let's make it. This is from yesterday's punctuation lesson. We were talking about apostrophes. Let me just clear all this, and then I will show you everything I can about the format of texts. So I apologize, my handwriting does not always look that bad. I was trying to write with my mouse and it's not easy. There we go. So we're going to start by looking at a letter. So a letter should always start with the details of the person sending it. So you would always start by writing your address at the very top. In your exams, this does not have to be your real address. You can entirely use your imagination, become an actor or an actress, make it up. If you want to say that you live at #1 Buckingham Palace, fine. Let's say Royal Road, London, and then we invent a postcode. Oh, there we go. So the first thing we start off with is our address. When we're writing a letter, we are the most important people. We are sending a letter. We are sending a message. Therefore, we are the most important person. In fact, what I'm going to do to make this a little bit more legible, I don't think these post-it notes are going to be big enough. Let me share this instead. There we go. If we put it on a Word document, it gives you an example of how it should look. Okay, so we have our address at the top. Then we need to write the address of the person that we are sending it to. And usually this is given to you in the exam question. So you can just copy and paste their address. Again, if they don't give you an address, you can make it up. So I'm going to say 25 College Street, entirely invented. I do not even know if this place physically exists. It doesn't matter. One of the key things we have to remember in the writing exams is we are not being examined on the factual content of our letters. We are only being examined on how well we communicate that information. So you could entirely fill your exam with lies. You can make it up, and that's totally fine. Because, as I say, they're just looking at how well you can communicate. That's it. The next thing we write is the date, and it doesn't matter whether you write it out in figures or in words. All I will say is there is a word count when you're writing anything of usually at level 1, you're expected to write 150 to 250 words. At level 2, you're expected to write 250 words. And if you write a date out in full, it does count it as 3 separate words. So if you're struggling to write enough, it's worth writing it out in full. Then we start our letter, and usually we would start it with dear, and we are given a name of somebody to write to. If we're not given their name, we are often given their position. So for example, it could be a manager or a counsellor or an editor of a newspaper, something like that. So we put in their name. Then we follow possibly my favourite technique for any kind of writing is called IPPC, where we always start with some form of introduction, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and a conclusion. So regardless of what we're asked to write about, we split it into these 5 manageable pieces. We start with an introduction, why we explain why we are writing. Usually on the question, it will ask us to look at 3 specific things. So we have 1 paragraph for the first thing, 1 paragraph for the second, and 1 for the third. And then our conclusion at the end, which I always say is so what? This is where we explain what we want from the person we're writing to. So, for example, if it says we are writing a complaint, then the last paragraph we would say, okay, so I have told you all about my complaint, and now I want my money back, or I want compensation, or I want public acknowledgement, or your last paragraph, this conclusion, is where you tell them what you want from them. Then we sign it off. So we use yours sincerely if we know their name. We use yours faithfully if we don't know their name. So if we use something like Dear Sir or their job title. And that is it. For the format of a letter, you can basically see from there what it looks like. So just from a distance, this is the format of a letter. So it doesn't matter necessarily whether you have, I know some different places, some different schools and colleges want their addresses to be either right aligned or left aligned. As long as you put the addresses in, that's all that counts. It doesn't matter if it's on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. Personally, I put everything on the left because then I don't have to think about it. It's just the easiest way for me. So that's a letter. That's the simplest one. The next one I'm going to show you is email. And to do that, I will literally show you my email app on the laptop. So when you're given an email to write, they will give you a template. They will show you what it looks like, but they will leave it empty. They will leave it entirely blank. So you're expected to fill in the to. So in this case, just put my own email address in because it really doesn't matter. And you're usually expected to give them the subject as well. So in the writing exams, the exam board will give you a topic or a subject, almost like a situation of what to write about. For example, one of the ones on the practice papers says, your local council is changing your bin collection from every 2 weeks to every 1 week. Write a letter to the council expressing your thoughts and feelings. So I use this one as a good example of how to complain. I like this one. It allows me to get a little bit dramatic, a little bit angry. So for that, my subject would be something along the lines of, oh, if I could spell it correctly, bin collection dates or bin collection. Then our content would be, if I pop back onto this one, exactly the same as the letter. Whatever we write in these exams will always have, oh, wrong email, there we go, the same content. We may use slightly different language, it may look slightly different, but the content will always be very similar. We will have an introduction, we will say dear to the person we're writing it to. We will have a little introduction telling them why we are writing. We have our 3 paragraphs, which is the main body of the email. And then we have our conclusion, the so what. I'll get rid of that little thing at the bottom of mine. And then we will also say our sort of sign off at the end, which could be yours sincerely or yours faithfully. Or sometimes, because email is considered a little bit more informal, you could say best wishes. I know I have a student whose favourite is always best regards. Best regards, I like that. Me personally, when I'm emailing my students, I always end with have a wonderful day or have a lovely day, because I want to end on a positive note. In this case, if it's something a little more formal or professional, we could use any of these quite successfully. And then we write our name on the bottom. For some reason, a lot of people seem to forget to write their names on the bottom of emails. But if you have an email address that is something like doglover29@hotmail.com, you know, a name that an email address that doesn't express your name on it, it is very important to ensure that we have our names on the bottom of emails. Okay, so we have letters, we have emails, and for this, I'm just going to copy a picture of this and put it onto our Word document underneath the letter. So we can see a picture of that one. And again, I will send these to you afterwards. Now, what's the next type of text that we can look at? We have letters, we have emails, reports, forum posts. Right. Make this a little bit bigger so we can read it. A review looks very similar to a report. These are possibly the simplest when it comes to working out the format of the text, what they should look like. They should always have some form of title explaining what the document is about. We don't need addresses because we're not physically sending it anywhere. We don't need an email address because we're not electronically sending it anywhere. We just need a title. Now, I personally find the title the hardest bit to do because the title summarizes the entire document. So I personally find it easier to write the entire document and then put the title in. So, for example, the last one, we said that we were writing something to the council about the bins, the waste collection. So my title would be something like bin collection or a report into issues surrounding changing bin collection dates. It's a little bit long-winded for an example, but we just have a title. You would say who it's written by, and then we follow that same format. We have an introduction, we have our 3 main points, and then we have our conclusion at the end. Now, sometimes we would recommend that each of these 3 paragraphs has a subtitle. So let's see, what's the best way? You would have the subtitle before writing the actual paragraph. And usually you would have it underlined. So you have a subtitle that tells you the contents of paragraph 1. The subtitle here tells the reader the contents of paragraph 2. And then again, the last one, we have a subtitle tells the reader the contents of paragraph 3. And whenever we have a subtitle, we underline them. As I say, in the questions, they will often tell us to talk about 3 particular aspects, 3 particular things. So for each of those 3 things, we have a subtitle and then we talk about it. Then we have a title and then we talk about it. Then we have subtitle, repeat till fade. So a review and a report, they're both fairly simple. They, I think, are the clearest and yeah, I think they're the simplest. Unlike a letter where you have to write your address, their address, the date, a review or a report are both very straightforward. You just have a title, your name, and then you start writing. If you can remember to put subtitles in as well, that could potentially get you to the highest end of the mark band. So you would get the highest marks for that particular part of the question, the formatting. But if you didn't include them, I can't see that it would drop a huge volume of marks. So we have letter, we have email, we have review and report. I'm just going to have a quick look, see whatever else. Forum posts. Okay, the easiest way to do this, if it will allow me access to it. Okay, so Reddit is a message board. So you find a subject that you particularly like, and then you will find lots and lots, here we go, of comments, of photos, of information. People have questions. These days, they tend to be more pictures than anything. Oh, they seem to be more pictures than they are statements. However, if you have a look on if I just show you on this one, on Atom, if you go to, sorry, mine does look slightly different to yours. But if you go to the Live Classrooms tab and then Recordings, I have literally come online, and with other students, we have completed reading exams and writing exams, and we've recorded them. So you can see these at any point. And there is, I think on the reading exams, on at least 2 of them, there are examples of a forum text, and it usually says, for example, John thinks this, and it tells you John's opinion. Then it says, Helen thinks this, and gives you Helen's opinion. And it's like people, it's like a conversation, but it's all people talking about the same subject. So Reddit used to be very, used to have just mostly people's commenting. However, these days, it's mainly pictures. I think these days we are a bit more image focused. Obviously, you can see my interests in here, can't you? So that's what a forum post would look like. I think, no, you guys. So for a forum post, again, these ones are quite straightforward in the sense that they don't need a lot of anything, really. A forum post usually has the name of the writer, and then it's a short comment with their either opinion, advice, thoughts, feelings, etc. It could be, it depends on the subject. So, for example, if you have Facebook and you are part of your local communities groups, you will see one person will write something about litter or noisy cars or local problems, or either really good things or really positive. And then other people will post their opinions underneath. I always find that they're very funny. Usually I find them very entertaining, especially the local ones to me. So a forum post is usually a short comment with your opinion, with advice for others, with thoughts, feelings. I think one of the examples that we looked at in the reading exam was somebody was asking for advice about wearing professional clothes for the first day of a job. And then lots of people in the same job gave her advice and guidance. And it wasn't always the same. Some people were very positive about wearing professional gear, and other people were saying you should be more comfortable. So it was different opinions, and that's fine. So a forum post is just something very short. So it doesn't need address or any contact details. It doesn't need address, doesn't need contact details, doesn't really need a title, doesn't really need subtitles, doesn't need any kind of greeting. So you don't need to say hello at the beginning necessarily. They do tend to be quite short. You see them more in the reading exams than you do in the writing. So as long as you can identify one, you don't necessarily need to be able to write one yourself. So as I say, if you go onto the Atom platform, look at the recorded reading exams, you'll be able to see examples of this. They usually, in the reading exams, give you 3 documents. They're usually all on the same subject broadly, but they are different styles and formats. So you may have a letter on one subject, you may have a forum post on the same subject, and you may have an email or an article. That's the third one. That's the last one for us. It's an article. So articles are most often seen in newspapers and magazines. They always start with a heading or a headline or a title. And this is usually, if we think about newspapers, They're written in a much larger font so that they catch the eye of somebody walking past, so that they're meant to draw the reader in, make them more interested. So we have a heading or a headline or a title, the same thing with 3 different names. They often also have a subheading or a subtitle underneath that gives you a little bit further detail. And then you have that same layout as all the other pieces of writing. We have a short introduction to the subject. We then talk about the 3 aspects that the question wants us to look at. And then we have the conclusion. What do you want your readers to do? That's the last part of it. And that's it. Often in newspaper articles, they may have things like columns, images, but I wouldn't worry about them too much, especially when it comes to writing. You wouldn't get any extra marks for being able to do a beautiful piece of artwork or for inserting a picture. You can't do anything like that in the exams. So each of these documents look ever so slightly different, but the content is very similar. So we notice, for example, we started right at the beginning. We have a letter. We can tell it's a letter from how it looks, but the content has that introduction, 3 paragraphs, conclusion. We have an email. So again, it looks slightly different, but the content in the middle is exactly the same. The review or report, again, so everything looks slightly different, but the meat, the important bit in the middle with the introduction, the 3 paragraphs and the conclusion is the same in every piece. So the article, there we go, there's the last one. So again, it may look slightly different. However, the information in the middle is always going to be the same. So let me just write this on here just for further future reference. So it could contain columns, images, but they wouldn't get you extra marks. So I'm going to very briefly just show you, in case you haven't already seen, with the exam board, I'm going to just very quickly show you one of the writing papers. I'm going to show you the level 2, because even if you guys are studying at level 1, it's always worth showing you. They're the same format. So this first one, as always, I will send you a link to this so you can see. This is a reading exam. So you're given a piece to read. In this case, this is an article. We can tell because it has the huge writing at the top. It tells us the writer's name underneath. Oh, I missed that off ours. Good. It also has the author's name. And then we have a brief paragraph, an image, a couple of paragraphs of information. Now, this particular one is a little bit short, but don't worry, these are just examples. So in the reading exams, you are expected to read it, and then you can see we have, in this case, there are 6 questions. The next document they want you to read, let's have a look at this one. Here we go. So this one, I would say, is more like a leaflet or something giving you advice. So they're different styles of document, but they're all on similar subjects. So in this case, it's about being environmentally friendly. The first one was an article about being sustainable. This second one is about making our own environmentally friendly cleaning products. And then the third one, the third document they ask us to look at, in this case, it's a website. And that makes it quite easy to tell because we have these little clues, things like the fact that there's a website address at the top. This is clearly the name of a company. We have tabs where you would find extra bits of information. And of course, they're trying to sell you a product. So, I mean, that's one example on the reading exams. When it comes to the writing exams, I show you what you could be asked to write. Now, on the writing exams, you will only be asked to write 2 documents, at level 1 and at level 2. And in this case, they are about parking spaces and public transport. And you are asked to write a report for the first one and an article for the second. If I show you the question, this says write a report. And it gives you a situation or a scenario or a story. It says, wherever you work, there aren't enough parking spaces for the people who come to your place of work. You have been asked to write a report outlining the problems it causes. Your report should describe the problems caused, here we go, our 3 paragraphs, to staff, to visitors, and to people in the local area. So we have our introduction, which is where you're talking about the fact you are writing a report about the parking. We have a paragraph about the problems for staff, the problems for visitors, and the problems for people in the local area. And then our conclusion is where we make suggestions. The second question on this one wants us to write an article. I always highlight the key words. It helps me focus on the most important parts of the question. This one says an article on your local newsfeed, so like a Facebook community group or Reddit, argues that public transport should be free of charge in order to reduce the number of cars on the road. The newsfeed is asking for readers to submit articles giving their opinions. So it's not asking for facts, it's asking for what you think and what you feel. So again, when we were writing this, it's an article. So we would have a headline or a heading at the top. We would have the author's name. So you would write by and then your name. And then we would start by writing our introduction. So you give the audience an idea of what the article is about. Then we go into those 3 paragraphs. And in this case, they have given us 3 things to write about, 3 bullet points. So we have paragraph 1 is the first one. Paragraph 2 would be the second, and then paragraph 3 would be the third. And then we finish it with our conclusion. So they do try to give you an idea of how they want it to look and the information they want it to include. So they try to also give you subjects where it doesn't matter if you have any life experience, because then it's not about whether or not you know the answer to the question. It's about how well you communicate. So you may have absolutely no feelings about public transport. You may have a car and you drive and you're happy and you don't care about buses and trains and trams. Fine. But don't write that in your article. Have an opinion. Either think that it's a great idea or a terrible idea, or judge both equally. You know, say, I think it's good, but. So you have to become a little bit imaginative, maybe a little bit dramatic in order to write your answers for these. Again, we're not looking for the truth, we're looking for how well you communicate. So that's an example of what they look like in the writing exam. I showed you briefly examples of how the exam board showed them to you. Again, I will put this link where you can have access. There's lots of past papers at level 1, at level 2, for reading and for writing. They're all on here, as well as the mark scheme, which is the answer booklet. However, the answer booklets are aimed at teaching staff, and I don't think they're particularly friendly to read. I don't think they're particularly accessible. If you attempted one of these exams, send it to me, I will mark it and I will give you proper feedback. The best thing I find about these mark schemes, it tells you that on this reading paper, it's out of 30 marks, and to pass, you needed 16. Just over 50% to pass this particular exam. The writing exams, it's slightly higher. I think it's 26 marks out of 44. So more 60, 65%. On the reading, it's 50, 55% to pass, which is good. That's doable. I think that's a fair mark scheme. So let me put this link. All I will say is if you do open these, you just click OK, yes, 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 you open it up. If you write the answers in here and you get to the end of the exam and you press submit, it will not send it to anybody for marking. These are just examples so that you can see what the exams look like. But if you press finish test, you will not get a result. Nobody will see it, and I cannot recover your answers. So if you do choose to do these, let me know and just copy and paste your answers into like an email and I'll mark it for you. More than happy to do that. So the website for past papers, I'll put it on there for you. I'll just show you as well on the Atom portal. If you go to the English course, and if you look at these ones that say assignments, we have put mock exams on here as well. So units 5 and 6 on here. We have a reading mock exam and a writing mock exam. And when you submit this, it will send it straight through to me and I will mark it. And I go through every single question and say either this is perfect or this needs work or this is totally wrong. But I will make sure that I give you as much feedback as possible for each individual question. But you just need to remember, for the reading, we're looking 50, 55% correct to pass. For the writing, you're looking at 60 or 65% to pass. Whew. Okay, 38 minutes of me talking at you. Do we have any questions before I just go through the last thing? Oh, Katerina. Oh, Katie, you said, what's the difference between level 1 and level 2? So the difference between level 1 and level 2 is in the writing exams, you are expected to write a lot more. So for level 1, I'll put this in the chat, writing exams, you're expected to do 150 to 250 words. For level 2, you are expected to write 250 to 350 words. So you're expected to write a lot more detail for level 2. The texts that you read in the reading exams are harder at level 2 than they are at level 1. Level 1, they are shorter texts and they are less detailed or complex. Level 2, so everything sort of looks the same, but it's a case of how much you're expected to write and how difficult the texts are to find the answers. So level 1 is a great start, but it also gets you prepared for level 2. Level 2 is hard. I say that personally as someone who has studied English and taught it for 30 years. Level 2, I think, is particularly difficult, especially if you speak 1, 2, or 3 languages. It's difficult. That doesn't mean it's impossible. You all have a good chance of getting it. So I've put the level 1 and level 2 writing exams, the reading exams. So level 1 have, I'll just put this in here, simpler texts, simpler and shorter texts. Level 2 is obviously slightly more complex. If we have any more questions, please put them in the chat. I will just continue with our last little thing. What do we have? We have 20 minutes remaining and we will be finishing on time today because I have another appointment at 11 o'clock. So let's keep going. The last little thing that I want to look at today, we've talked about the format of these texts, what they look like. I've shown you what they look like on the reading exams and the writing exams. So we're just going to cover one last little thing, which is the audience. The audience, who we write something for, makes a huge difference to the language that we use. So if I just open up that Word document again, and we'll just any notes, anything that I write that I think will be useful, I will write it in here and send it out to you all when we finish. So the audience of texts. So if you are writing something professional, this is possibly one of the most common audiences that we are given to write to in the writing exams. It would be to either someone like local council, a company, an employer, a school or college, or some kind of, anything to do with your community. They tend to be the main people that we are expected to write to. And because of that, our language needs to be formal, business-like throughout. So it can be a little bit friendly if you feel that that is necessary, but we will avoid things like slang, shortened or abbreviated words. So things like, I marked an exam this morning for somebody and they wrote you instead of you. This is very informal. This is not. In your English exams, you are showing off your English skills. You are showing us the best possible way that you can write. Therefore, don't do the shortened versions. Always write the full words. So you would avoid slang, shortened or abbreviated words. You would avoid using dialect. So these are words that are specific to your geographic area. So personally, I live in Yorkshire. In Yorkshire, we have a lot of dialect terms. So where we would use an alternative word, but you only hear it locally. For example, if you have a sandwich, you can have flatbread, or you can have, round here, we call it a bread cake. It's bread and it's this shape, but in Yorkshire, we call it a bread cake. In Derbyshire, we call it a cob. In the south, we call it a bap. It's the same thing. It is a piece of bread, but it has different names all over the country. It's just a quirk. It's one of those things that in different areas, we have different names for the same thing. We try to avoid using terms that are specific to our geographic area. We want to use just general good English, nothing that pinpoints our location. So we try to avoid dialect. So again, I'll just put the meaning of that in brackets. So local words or phrases. We want to avoid slang. We want to avoid shortened words. And we want to avoid anything too technical. So you may have knowledge on a subject that shows that you have years of experience and that comes up in your exam. That's great. It's something you know about. However, if the examiner has no idea what some of the words you're saying means because they're so technical, then you wouldn't necessarily get a good mark because you're not communicating for your audience. It's like if you were writing for children, you would use short sentences, you would use simple words and phrases. If you are writing for somebody professional, you follow these rules. If you are writing to a friend, then perhaps you could use, your own words and phrases. You could use those shortened versions. So the audience of your text really changes the words that we choose, the sentence length that we write, and the overall tone as well. So if we were doing a letter to somebody like the local council, a company, an employer, a college, a community, it's formal, it's business-like, and it's quite, I would say, what we call high register language. So this is, I don't know, we used to call it the Queen's English, textbook English. So you would use formal, business-like, high register language, and you use that throughout, all the way. Want to avoid things like slang, abbreviated, shortened words, dialect, anything too local, anything too technical. Is that it? Yes, I would say so. So we need to think about not only if it's formal or informal, but also we need to consider things to consider, the age of our audience, because children, if we were writing something for children, like I say, it would be very simple in comparison. If we're writing for somebody very professional, again, we would change our tone. So your tone can be friendly, it can be professional, it can be funny. It depends entirely on what you are expected to write. So the tone. Your tone is the overall, almost like the emotion that you put into your writing. If I send an email out to my students, I try to be friendly but professional. So I will always start with a relatively informal greeting. Hello, everybody. Hi, good morning. And I will always end my emails with something, again, friendly. Have a good day. Have a nice day. Have a lovely day. Have a wonderful day. I pass on positive thoughts for the rest of the day. But the actual content can still remain very professional throughout. So your tone could be friendly, professional, funny, argumentative. I saw one in a mock exam this week that said that somebody had a self-important tone. It was a message board. It was one of those forum posts, and somebody was making it sound as though they were the center of the world. So it's been able to identify these. In the reading exams, you need to identify the tone, the audience, things like that, and the format. And in the writing exam, you need to be able to display the fact that you need to be able to show this is a letter, this is what it looks like. Because it's professional, I have used this kind of language and I have given it this kind of tone. So there's a range of the things that we need to consider before we start writing anything. And when we're reading something, we need to think about their purpose as well. So that is why somebody has written something. This is the last thing we will look at today because I've been talking at you a lot today. Let me just. So, purpose of text. Why something has been written. And there are only about 5 choices for this one. It could be to give some instructions, a text to instruct, to tell the reader what to do. Examples, a recipe. A recipe tells you what to do. It doesn't have emotion. It doesn't have a huge amount of detail. It just gives you everything you need to be able to do something properly. Then we have texts that are to describe. So they try to put an image in the reader's head. They try to show the reader what, in detail, they try to, put an image in the head. So show the reader what's in the writer's head. For example, a description of a place, an event, or something that is written for pleasure, like a novel or a book. So we have instruct, we have describe, and then my personal favourite, we have texts that persuade you. So the most common examples of these are adverts. You'll see, especially now that we've got Christmas coming up, all the adverts that are coming out to show us, what perfumes to buy, which supermarkets to shop at. They will always try to use certain techniques to persuade you that their item or their shop is the best. They want you or they want the reader to think or feel the same way as them. So the person writing the advert for Tesco or Asda thinks that Tesco or Asda is the best. They want you to think that they're the best too. And it can be because they show you their product and tell you how amazing it is, or it could be because they tell you about offers or prices or whatever it is that makes their company or product different. There are, and I will write this in here, a list of specific techniques that people use for persuasive writing, which go by the acronym Daft Forest. We will have an entire lesson just on Daft Forest features. In fact, on Atom, we do have, if I can find it, where is it? Oh, right, okay, so looks like Atom's potentially down at the moment. There is a recorded lesson on Daft Forest. It may be called Language Techniques. So it's worth having a look at those. But again, we will go into those, I think, on Thursday or Friday of this week. So text, they instruct, they describe, they persuade, they inform. I would like to be able to tell you that newspapers just give you information. It used to be a lot simpler. Before the internet, before fake news, before people had sort of more obvious agendas, things like the BBC and what we call broadsheet newspapers used to just be there to express the news, just to give you information, not to persuade you of something, not to make you consider different aspects of something, but it was just to pass the information. This event occurred at this date and this time. These days, the news, if we look at our news channels, they are sponsored by political parties. They have an agenda. A lot of them have bias. So we need to think in a newspaper, in articles, on websites, they may have the intention to just give us information. However, we also need to think, can we trust that information? So a text that is meant to inform, examples are meant to be, oh dear, that's very big. Newspapers, articles, websites. Again, this is difficult because there's websites for everything. So they should give the reader information without bias. So
I'm
bias.
sorry.
No, hello.
Hello, Alex. Sorry, could I say about this, because I have experience with this. In Ukraine, I'm public person. For example, I am from rock metal stage, and some rock metal singers, they pay for articles. And the famous singer, I want to say it here because I have right now no finance, but she lie in her interviews, and after some different musicians stay on my back, they start delay this information. She lies like she got a stroke. She doesn't know reason of the stroke. Could you believe? After this, she gave 22 concerts. It's total nonsense. I'm sorry, but I cannot say this nonsense.
No, do you know what? I like the fact, Kate, that you have these real life examples. It shows that this is true information. And the fact that people lie and pay money for articles, it's like when you see people, YouTubers, influencers, and they say, I love this product. This product is so good, because they have been paid to tell you that that product is good, you know? So we need to think, although some documents are there to give us information, we do have to be, we have to use our critical thinking skills at the same time. So that is it. That is, I will stop talking at you for today. We have 4 minutes if we have any questions, as I say, I will share this document with you. It has been recorded because I fully understand I speak very quickly sometimes. So we record them. You can listen back at your own pace, at your own speed. I will send you the document that we have been working through together. Oh, Magda, bless you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If anybody needs anything, I am online again at 1 o'clock if people have any queries or questions about the course. I'm online at 4 o'clock as well. And all of the links I have sent out by email last week and are on Atom as well. Katie, I have a meeting. I think you've booked me in twice today and I can't do both times. But again, let me just have a look. I will say goodbye to Magda and Lilia. You guys, if you have any problems, questions, contact me. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. I will speak to you both later.